$227 billion. That's how much wealth left the United States in a single year, quietly, legally, and with the full cooperation of the global financial system. Not stolen, not hidden, moved, and the people moving it weren't criminals. They were the wealthiest individuals on the planet, operating by a completely different set of rules than everyone else. Here's what almost nobody talks about. The ultra-wealthy don't think in currencies, they think in jurisdictions. When a billionaire spreads assets across Switzerland, the Cayman Islands, Singapore, and Luxembourg, that's not paranoia, that's architecture. Each country in that structure serves a specific function. One protects, one compounds, one shields, one exits. Strip any one piece out, and the whole system loses efficiency. Keep it intact, and the wealth becomes nearly impossible to tax, seize, or erode. The strategy starts with political risk. The wealthiest families in history didn't lose everything in market crashes. They lost everything when governments changed. The Romanovs, the Cuban elite in 1959, Venezuelan industrialists after Chavez, capital controls, asset freezes, nationalization. These aren't history lessons. They're live threats in a world where 40% of countries have implemented some form of capital restriction in the last decade. Geographic diversification isn't about distrust of one country. It's about understanding that every country under the right pressure will prioritize its own survival over yours. Then comes the tax structure. Most people think offshore accounts are about evasion. They're not, at least not at this level. They're about deferral and arbitrage. A billionaire doesn't need to evade taxes. They need to control when those taxes are triggered. Holding companies in the Cayman Islands don't generate taxable events until distributions are made. Dutch holding structures reduce withholding taxes on dividends moving between countries. Irish entities capture royalties at 12.5% before profits ever reach a high tax jurisdiction. None of this is secret. It's in the tax code. The difference is that accessing it requires a level of legal and financial infrastructure most people will never be able to afford. The third layer is currency. A portfolio held entirely in one currency is a portfolio fully exposed to one central bank's decisions. When the Federal Reserve printed $4.8 trillion between 2020 and 2022, dollar-denominated assets absorbed that risk. Billionaires hedge by holding Swiss franc reserves, Singapore dollar instruments, and hard assets, gold, art, real estate, that sit outside any monetary system entirely. Singapore specifically has become the jurisdiction of choice for Asian ultra-high net worth families because of its political neutrality, zero capital gains tax, and its function as a vault that no regional conflict is likely to touch. The fourth layer is estate planning. In the United States, the federal estate tax hits at 40% above the exemption threshold. Without a structure, a $10 billion estate hands $3.5 billion to the government on death. With an irrevocable trust domiciled in South Dakota, technically domestic but functionally stateless, that same estate can pass across generations indefinitely. The wealthy discovered that certain U.S. states compete to attract trust assets the same way offshore jurisdictions do. Delaware, Nevada, South Dakota. They've gutted their own trust laws to win a piece of a multi-trillion-dollar capital migration that most Americans don't know is happening. What this creates at the top end of the wealth spectrum is something closer to a private financial country. It has its own rules, its own borders, its own relationships with every government it touches, and loyalty to none of them. The billionaire isn't a citizen of their wealth structure. They're the sovereign of it. The system isn't broken. It was built this way. One treaty, one tax code amendment, one jurisdiction shopping decision at a time, and the gap it creates isn't between the rich and the poor. It's between those who understand that wealth is a geography problem and everyone else still treating it like a math problem. The borders that contain most people's money don't contain theirs.